Coming up on show 854, so Tesla released their Q2 safety report, and we're going to dig into that on the programme today. Stick around. Plus, how many reservations for Fisker's Ocean SUV? We know the answer, not just a tease, I'll let you know. Volkswagen are delaying a deal with one of their possible future customers. Also, we're talking about the Lordstown Motors Endurance, the electric pickup truck, released in a new video. And how well is the Mini Electric doing? We'll find out. Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you're listening in the world. Welcome to EV News Daily. This is the edition for what happened on Friday, 31st of July. My name is Martyn Lee, going through every EV story so you don't have to. And thank you, as always, to myev.com. If you're in the US, you've got access to MyEV. It's totally free. I know what they say, like, what's the catch? It's free? Yeah, there is no catch. It's totally free. And it's a marketplace, all about connecting buyers and sellers. All the guys and girls that work there drive EVs. I've been to visit them in Miami. Most of them, if I'm honest with you, Teslas, and they're just huge fans of electric cars. They want to just build an amazing product for EV fans. Check out myev.com. Let's kick off with news about the Fisker Ocean. So Fisker, which pins its hopes on rising from the ashes of the Ocean electric SUV, dished out a hard figure to judge just how much interest there is in their upcoming EV. Nothing spectacular, but there's certainly interest, says CNET. Well, the company said on Friday that it had 7,062 reservations for the Ocean. That's compared to recent news surrounding pre-orders. And yes, we're looking at you, Tesla Cybertruck, in the hundreds of thousands. That's a drop in the bucket, really. However, says CNET, it goes on to show there is an audience for Fisker's SUV with oodles of sustainable materials inside. The reservations come from 30 countries. And Fisker said the figure virtually sells out the first planned production run, happening in late 2022. Additionally, Fisker talked about a second SUV. For the first time, they've dubbed it a sports crossover. Now, the image shows a swoopy design reminiscent of the Volkswagen ID 4, and behind it, the startup also wants to produce a pickup truck as well. I'm sure they do. Both lucrative markets. But buried as almost a passing note in a recent investor presentation by the car designer and EV startup founder Henrik Fisker, he said that Volkswagen had delayed negotiations to supply powertrain parts for the upcoming Ocean crossover. Now that sounds like a big problem, according to Jalopnik. This could be a huge problem for Fisker, as it's already advertised and sold deposits for a vehicle with a certain projected performance, no doubt based on using Volkswagen's MEB platform, which was the plan. But VW now pressing pause on that. Deposits that Fisker accepted without even knowing for certain what the fundamental hardware of the vehicle would even be. Any major changes from here could mean major changes to the Ocean as advertised, and if they're changes for the worst, expect to refund deposits. I'm sure Fisker would say that they plan on making the car that people have put deposits down for, and we wish everybody the best of luck bringing new EVs to market. It must be just ridiculously complicated to make a new car. We know about Tesla's production hell they've been through, but Fisker seemed to have an interesting way of doing it using a platform from another car maker. They said they were going to be using Volkswagen's and the MEB platform, licensing that, just as Ford are doing here in Europe. Now, I do have a statement from Fisker, who responded to the stories today on various media outlets. They say, "We remain in conversation and parallel development with several industry-leading platform and manufacturing OEMs and suppliers, and will continue to consider any opportunities that would enable us to enter into definitive manufacturing and supply agreements before the year end. We are committed to taking any actions that advance our objective of delivering the Ocean as early as the end of 2022. Doesn't sound very early to me. It sounds like it's 2.5 years away, but good luck to the gang at Fisker, and I hope they get their issue sorted out with whose technology they're going to use. There's absolutely no denying that Henrik Fisker is a great designer. The Ocean looks fabulous, but at the moment, it is some pictures that Henrik's drawn, and not too much else. Okay, I'm being moderately flippant here in offering my opinion on this story, so good luck to the team there. Well, headline story today. In the second quarter, Tesla registered one accident For every 4.53 million miles driven, which drivers had autopilot engaged. For those driving without autopilot but with the Tesla active safety features, one accident every 2.27 million miles driven. So that's 4.53 million miles with autopilot on and 2.27 miles driven, 2.27 million miles driven. One accident per that many miles with it turned off. For those driving without autopilot and without active safety features, it's one accident in every 1.56 million miles driven. And by comparison, NHTSA's most recent data shows that in the United States, there is an automobile crash once every 479,000 miles. Now, Tesla had an accident on autopilot every 3.27 million miles this time last year. Year on year, going up from 3.27 to 4.53. And that is wonderful to hear, that accident rates are going down. And actually, the average of one every 479,000 miles is a big difference, right? So a couple of factors to bring into play here. And, I may be wrong, but just thinking about this, autopilot tends to be used on highways. When you're doing highway speeds. I know not all the time. And before you email me and say you use it around town all the time, you would agree with me. It tends to be used when you're at those kind of speeds on the highways. And so it is easier to cronk through the miles at a faster rate when you're using the autopilot system on the highway, the freeways. Just saying. However, undeniably, it's good news, and whether you believe autopilot is going to be the saviour of the planet, or whether you believe that autopilot in Teslas is just a very good version of clever cruise control with some lane-changey stuff, I'm probably halfway between those. It's impressive technology, but there'll be no robo-taxis by the end of the year. So whatever you feel about it, there's no denying that some of these safety features, like Super Cruise and the GM cars and the Cadillacs and Tesla's autopilot as well, anything that enables the jobs which can be automated easier to be done by the computers, and that allows a little more brain space and more brain time just for you to be more relaxed in the car, whether you need to react. Obviously, you need to stay alert at all times, as the new technologies that are coming out as well, not so much in Teslas, but in other cars, like in Ford as well, they'll have a face tracking camera that faces you, eye tracking, I should say. And so that is a great way of knowing, rather than just keeping your hand on the wheel, actually how engaged in the journey are you whilst you're using these technologies. And so as long as you're alert, as long as the technology works and it improves safety, we absolutely should be doing more of these in all of the different EVs that are on the market. I don't imagine you'll get too much autopilot in the next story, though. America's cheapest electric vehicles are coming courtesy of a Chinese automaker, and it's called Kandi. Kandi with a K and an I. K-A-N-D-I. The Chinese EV and parts maker Kandi Technologies is officially bringing two EVs to the United States through a subsidiary called Kandi of America. News that has prompted a run-up in their share price today, says TechCrunch. Well, Kandi Technologies has been talking about bringing EVs to the US for a couple of years now. Two models are arriving as early as the end of this year, actually, and a limited area to begin with in Texas. Both are priced under $30,000. That's before any federal incentives. The two models heading to the US are the K27. Now, the K27 comes with a 17.69 kilowatt-hour battery. Not the biggest. There is a bigger car, though, the larger K23. That's coming to the US market, and that's going to have... It's a small SUV. It's pure electric. It's got 41.4 kilowatt hour of battery energy stored and the driving range of 180 miles. That's the K23, starting at less than $30,000 before you apply any incentives at all. For those that aren't particularly precious about the brand of car they drive, maybe it's worth a punt to see what the Kandi EV is really like. Okay, right, next story. Let's talk Audi. Future Audi RS models will have one powertrain in the future, and it will be electrified. Not pure electric, hold your horses, but it will be electrified. That means some sort of battery technology. According to Audi Sports sales and marketing head Rolf Michel, in an Autocar interview, the brand's intentions include mild hybrids, but also plug-ins and full EVs. As for the latter two, there'll be plug-ins and full EVs arriving before the end of 2023. You'd hope so, wouldn't you? A brand as big and powerful and smart as Audi announcing that there'll be electric cars, more of them by the next 3 years. Yeah, kind of a no-brainer, but we do like a positive story on this podcast. There'll be the RS4 plug-in and a full electric Audi e-tron GT RS. It's what Audi do, it's how they work, it's their MO. They'll release a car and then not long after, there'll be the RS version. So the e-tron GT RS. I didn't think it would take 3 years, though. I'm not sure it will. I think that all of these plans that are being announced, as they see how fast EVs start spreading over the next few months and into next year, I think those cars might well get moved up the order just a little bit. Let's talk Lordstown next. Lordstown Motors showing off the Endurance electric pickup truck in a new video, releasing a new promotional video with their all-electric pickup, the Endurance, scheduled for a market launch in summer 2021. The description says, according to Inside EVs, keep moving, keep building, keep believing. Endurance will take us forward because endurance is what got us here. Introducing the all-electric Endurance by Lordstown Motors. Have a look at the video online. I'll pop a link in the show notes if you want to read more. They're definitely going for the worker feel with this car. So this is a working truck rather than the Rivian is going to be a sport leisure truck. The Rivian is going to be useful during the week, but come into its own when you want to head into the countryside, the forest, the woods, head down to the lake, maybe tow a boat, get your camping gear out, all that kind of stuff. Now, it won't be here because there's no pickup truck culture here. I mean, don't get me wrong. In the UK, we do have pickups. It's not like they don't exist. It's just not a culture. Whereas in the US, of course, people will buy the Rivian just because it looks cool. Like they don't need a pickup, but it's useful to have and it looks cool. It'll be a leisure one. The Endurance, though, well, that's going to be a pickup truck that is used as a working vehicle day in, day out. And that's what Lordstown are banking on. Let's talk Mini next, and the Mini plant in Oxford has built more than 11,000 Mini electrics since production began, and 3,000 of those have come to the UK so far. The UK is the second largest market for the electric Mini, with 19% sales share for the Mini electric and the Countryman plug-in hybrid. Next year, a third of Mini hatch models built will be pure electric. All right, moving on, and the engineering company Mahler has presented a new type of condenser for cooling systems in hybrid and pure electric vehicles that will enable faster charging of the traction battery. Did I just say traction battery correctly? It's been a long day. According to Electrive, the development of the new condenser has been prompted by the increase in the demands on cooling systems in hybrid and electric vehicles, where the battery, the power electronics, the electric motors, and all the other components must be kept within a very carefully defined temperature window, and EV temperatures can fluctuate a lot more than you would find in combustion cars. For instance, your car doesn't get very hot when you're pumping petrol into it, whereas an EV, if it's going to be charging very quickly, can have to deal with those rapid changes in temperature. So Mahler here looking at technology for keeping all the various systems, not just the battery, but all of the various systems in an EV at the optimal temperature. I love stories like this because outside of what you'll see reported by, the mainstream kind of EV blogs and things like that, there's so much work happening in the universe around that, all right, so maybe it won't be the lead item in the podcast. Maybe we're not going to have the lead story about a new cooling system. But I love stuff like this because, firstly, I love learning about how EVs work, but it's just so much an indication of how much is happening in the space. Well, BYD, a company that is back building electric buses post-COVID shutdown in the US, and their first post-closure delivery has been completed. 10 electric buses for the Washington state. They're K9S buses, says Charged EVs. The K9S is a 35-footer, pure electric bus, 32 people inside it, 215 miles, takes 3 to 4 hours to charge, and when they do, they'll be doing it with wireless charging. Oh, I love a bit of wireless charging. The wireless charging has been used from the Momentum Dynamics stable of technologies, which can use en route charging completely wirelessly. In January, Momentum and Link Transit extended their relationship with a 5-year agreement so that they will be charging at 300 kilowatts. The buses that are en route will stop at a charging station and wirelessly charge at 300 kilowatts of power. And finally today, Clean Technica done a roundup of some 4 exciting vans. And long-term listeners of the podcast will know I have an irrational love of commercial working vehicles like vans. I'd really, really love an electric van. And I make podcasts for a living. There is absolutely no reason for me to have an EV van. But as a second thing in the driveway, I think it'd be so useful. I mean, just for a family life, just because we live near the beach and our car, like the thing that I'm doing the most is hoovering sand out of the car. To have an EV van that you just shove the push chair, the baby stuff all in the back, it would just be like just amazing. Right, so useful, as long as we could sit 3 up front. Looks like Clean Technica, maybe not as excited as I am, but curious about EV vans. They've lined up the Peugeot e-Expert and the Citroën e-Dispatch first up in their list. And yes, if you've been paying attention, they are indeed the same car. It's available to order now in the UK at £25,053. That excludes VAT because they're business purchases, or you'll be leasing one, so who cares about the VAT? You'll claim it back. But that is after the plug-in van grant money has been taken off. It's 25 grand for a van that will get you a couple of 100 miles. They also recognise the Renault Zoe van. The all-new Zoe van will do 245 miles on a charge. Admittedly, this is not a panel van. This is a small car, but it is homologated as a proper commercial van. Back seats taken out. It's re-registered as a van. 52 kilowatt hour battery pack. 80 kilowatt motor. And therefore you get the plug-in van grant. And finally, the Mercedes-Benz EQV. Now, I would like this. We don't have enough kids or any kind of reason to have a van this big. Oh, but again, I'd really, really love one in the driveway. Just because a Mercedes-Benz EQV, the van version of the Mercedes-Benz, has a hefty price tag. Starting price is £70,000. Ouch. The EQV 300 Sport, 70 grand with a 90 kilowatt hour battery. 213 miles of range. That is not going to be used by anybody apart from those who are making it work for a living. Hotels, luxury chauffeurs, airport transfers, those are going to put the van to work. They'll amortize that over 2, 3, 4 years or whatever. I mean, 70 grand is so expensive. That puts it out of the range for any family wanting 7 or 8 seats, or just a van to ferry the kids around. But it's a luxury van, leather seats, and chauffeuring and stuff like that. So, but definitely a van that is going to be earning its keep, if you know what I mean. Right, that's your show today. Thank you for listening. Hope you enjoyed it. You can get in touch anytime. hello@evnewsdaily.com is my email address. There will be a Saturday and Sunday show this week, but having read all of your emails over the last week, I'm thinking that from next week, EV News Daily goes to weekdays, Monday to Friday. The feedback overwhelmingly is that people wouldn't mind me having weekends off, a bit more time with the family, as we are a new family. And also, more than one person has said, look, I know that you always try and catch up if you miss, a day when you're working or busy. People would rather, the feedback seems to be, you'd rather 5 shows a week that happened regular as clockwork than 7 shows a week when I can get them out. So I've listened to you, I've taken all of your feedback on board, and I will let you know further plans over the next couple of days. But look out for Saturday's podcast tomorrow. Well, there are 853 previous shows in the archive, and if you'd like to have a look at the blog, it's evnewsdaily.com. If you want to search the blog as a story or a subject that you would like to find out more about, you certainly can. If you want to subscribe to the podcast, please do so. Whether you are out of your usual routine, post-COVID, still working from home a bit. Maybe the commute isn't happening, and so maybe you're listening to podcasts on your lunch break or while you work with your headphones on. I always like to hear what people are doing when they're listening to the podcast, but I know that routine's different. Remember to subscribe to the podcast and always look out for brand new shows when they arrive inside your app and your pod catcher. If you can leave a little review on Apple Podcasts or on iTunes, it does help me grow the show. And thank you to our premium partners, Phil Roberts of Electric Future, Brad Crosby, Avid Technology, Brightsmith Group, Porsche of the Village in Cincinnati, and Audi of Cincinnati East, Volvo Cars of Cincinnati East, and now nationalcarcharging.com and allohacharge.com, their sister company in gorgeous Hawaii. And as of tomorrow, I'll tell you all about a brand new premium partner joining this podcast who I am excited about talking about. Thank you very much for listening. Have a wonderful day. I'll catch you tomorrow. And remember, there is no such thing as a self-charging hybrid.